Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yati Yat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Badhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are in chapter 2, and last week we started the very famous Sthita Prajna Purusha section, which starts on verse 54. So we did 54 and 55. So a little bit of review. Arjuna asks, how does the person of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna, when they're in, Swamiji translates it as the super conscious state. The word in Sanskrit is samadhi. How do they sit? How do they stand? How do they speak? How do they move through the world? And then Krishna starts with my favorite verse in the whole Gita. When a person casts off all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then they're said to be a person of steady wisdom. Now, I had a chat with a student this past week. We're just kind of beginning to work, but he's had quite a bit of experience in Buddhist practice. And one of his challenges is he's had a lot of what he considers very deep spiritual experiences. My sense he's kind of hung on to those. But the problem is he still is full of desires for the world to which he's very attached. He takes the world as very real. And a lot of attachment to his suffering. So he was sharing with me how, he went into the self-pitying tailspin. My life sucks. I've had so much trouble. I had this terrible childhood. All these terrible things are happening. I'll never find a partner. Poor me, poor me, poor me. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Yes? No? So what this is when the mind spins on some of these things. Now, this is a very interesting point. Normally, when we talk about attachments, we think, oh, I'm attached to pleasure. We can be attached to our suffering. Self-pity is a klesha. Klesha means an affliction or a defilement, an issue. Now, in Shankara's Vivekachudamani, one of my favorite verses from that text, 267, he says, even after realization of the truth, meaning I may have had some very deep experiences, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. This doesn't mean I'm going to come back as a lizard. It means I re-identify. I think I'm a person. I may have had these deep moments of meditation where I know I am that Chidakash, that space of pure awareness. But if I still have that strong impression, karta, doer, when I come out of meditation, Jim, am going through my world, and I don't like this, and I am upset at that, and I don't like my life here, and I'm a terrible person, and I have had such suffering. I, me, mine, I, me, mine, I, me, mine. Shankara then says this needs to be conscientiously rooted out. How? Through steady and continuous identification with the self. So we have to practice Viveka Vairagya Cha. Viveka, that firm conviction in the intellect that the self alone is real, Brahman alone is real, and the phenomenal world is mithya. Literally, it means a lie or an illusion. We can start with an understanding that it's impermanent, that the only pleasure it's going to give is finite and temporary. And that desire to give up all personal ideas of self, starting from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, meaning I'm a powerful, important person. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Drop it. Then Shankara says it's the annihilation of the vasanas here and now. Let's consider liberation by the wise. Meaning all these attachments, all these identifications, we have to let go of them. Now, I've had other people say, oh, well, all this kind of spirituality, you don't want to have spiritual bypass. It's a term I just don't like. I don't like to use it. But a lot of people think that if I just have a wackadoodle experience, that's going to do it. I'm sorry, it's not that simple. We have to do the manual labor. Attachment by attachment, identification by identification, of dropping those vasanas. There's no other way. No other way. This is the gritty work of the path. So you can go on a retreat, have a really deep experience, and then come back and your life is still filled with suffering. What's usually the problem? Sangraha, attachment. Jiva bhavana. I think I'm a person. Always. And there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. The practice of witnessing the mind. And when the mind starts to spin and go down these rabbit holes, we have to learn, I'm not going to believe you. You're just a syndrome. Bring the mind back. To what? Point of attention. What we call jnana, abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not my stories. Koham, who am I? I'm the eternal witness. I'm Chidakash, the space of pure awareness. Over and over again. And don't get involved in that kind of sick pleasure of dwelling in the negativity. Any thoughts on this? Okay, so let's continue. I think we did not do 55, did we?
We did.
Yes.
We did 55?
Yeah, we had 56.
Okay, 56, please.
Dukeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspriha Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Stitadhir Muni Ruchyate. He whose mind is not shaken up by adversity, and who in prosperity does not hanker after pleasures, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady wisdom.
Okay, so a Muni, a sage. Muni comes from the same root as Maunam. Who can tell me what Maunam means?
Silence.
Silence. And it's not just guarding our speech. It means cultivating a silent mind. Learning to put our mind where our hands are working. Not letting the mind go off into stories of the past or worries for the future. Staying out of other people's business. This is the deeper understanding of Mauna. So let's parse this verse thought by thought. So what's the first idea?
He whose mind is not shaken up by adversity.
Yes. So I like to think of the situations of life as basically a sine wave. Sometimes I get what I want, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depending on our past karma. So the mind of the seeker after wisdom, the mumukshu, of course, for the Muni, yes, we practice this. We stand back in this intense spirit of renunciation of attachment to both positive things in life and the negative. Listen carefully. The fruit of the spiritual life doesn't mean you're going to hit all the green lights of life. It doesn't work that way. Each of us, according to our prarabdha karma, will get our allotted dose of successes and failures, pleasant events and calamities. But what we want to do is stand back, sakshi bhava, and watch it so we can match both the pleasurable experiences and the negative ones with an equanimity of mind. How? With the clear knowledge that none of it touches the self. You want to be like the eye of the cyclone, the still point. Let the world revolve around. Nothing in life is important enough for you to lose your peace of mind. Make peace of mind your highest priority. No good situation should rattle your cage. No negative one will. What's the truth of all of them? They will pass. And real serenity is independent of the world. Go, go. We learn to pause when agitated. Just don't do something, stand there. Wait till the turbulence settles down. Let it go. Then act as you will. But life is like the ocean. The waves come in, the waves go out. The waves come in, the waves come out. The Republicans win, the Democrats win. There's a war overseas, there's a peace agreement. You meet new friends, loved ones die. Nothing is. Any thoughts on this? This practice of sama drishta, this equality of vision. What's indicated here by this verse? Keeping the mind quiet inside. Now, if your mind has a terrible upset, vomits up a bunch of agitation, don't believe it. Just stand back. Wait. It will pass. There's no mind state is permanent. Now, let me give you one of the laws of the mind. Any mental experience that is fully experienced tends to dissipate. Any mental experience that's resisted or denied tends to persist. This is why going unconscious, trying to avoid discomfort, only makes it last longer. If you're sad, stop. Be present to your sadness. Doesn't mean go down a story. Just be present. Watch it. And if you're present to it, it dissipates much more quickly. I'm not going to feel that. It's too painful. I got to get away from it. I need to have a drink. I need to take a drug. I need to take a pill. It will persist. So you feel it. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
You don't want the other parts too.
Oh, did I miss something? Read it again for me, please.
Who in prosperity does not hanker after pleasures, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger. It's called the sage of steady wisdom.
Yeah, so when good things happen, there's nothing wrong with good things happening. But don't be attached. Don't hanker after them. Oh, I gotta hang on to it. Or in adversity, don't worry. It will pass. It will pass. All right, next verse.
Yah sarvatraṇabhisneha sataprápya shubhashubham nabhinandati na dveshti tasya prajñā pratisthita. He who is everywhere without attachment, on meeting with anything good or bad, who neither rejoices or hates, his wisdom is fixed.
Yes. Now, let me give you another insight into the style of Vedanta scriptures. We talked about how if there's a series or a list, the most important idea is listed first. Another aspect of the style is when an idea is repeated in different words, it's important. So here Krishna repeats himself in different words, talks about the importance of developing this equality of vision, this Samadhisha. Again, we are not to be afraid of blessings in life. The problem is not the enjoyment. The problem is the attachment. Now, if you continue to pay attention to the mind, make friends with our suffering. What does it feel like to want something I don't have? It sucks. The scriptures say, in fact, there's no other suffering. What about if I break a leg? Okay, we'll put physical pain aside. When most people don't shoot themselves because they've got a broken leg, it's mental. That's what destroys most of us. And it always is some form of wanting what I don't have, wanting to be rid of what I don't like. Or I have what I want, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. Some form of karma. We divide it into raga, my passion for things, dvesha, aversion, and bhaya, fear. I'm going to lose what I got. Don't believe the scripture and don't believe me. Can you find any other kind of suffering? Ego says I'm unhappy because I'm not getting what I want. I don't have the relationship. I don't have the right job. I don't have the right house. I don't have the right car. I'm not living in the right city. And yoga says, mudha. What's mudha mean? Fool. You're not suffering because you don't have these things. We're suffering because we're stuck wanting. So watch the mind. Own your own dukkha, your own suffering. See what causes it. And then the other side. Own your ananda. Desire and object of desire become one. We get a kiss of the bliss of our own self-nature. Vishayananda, the bliss that we get through the sense objects. You mean good food, good sex, good music, beautiful art, all does the same thing to my mind? Yeah. It will vary in intensity and it will vary in duration. But what it is a little hit of the bliss of myself. What's happened is for most of us, constant low level agitation, low level discomfort, restlessness, discontent momentarily goes away. I hear people say, oh, Jim, I just want some release. Release from what? The tyranny of the agitated mind. So we have to begin to see that pleasure always tastes the same. It's not in the object. I just use the object to get a momentary respite from the agitated mind. All that it is. Own our suffering, own our honor. So right now, the only way I can be happy is with people, places, things, and conditions. Yoga says nothing wrong with that. But why not get rid of the medium, the middleman, and go straight for the happiness? Back to verse 55, 54, 55. And is satisfied in the self, by the self. Then our relationship with the world changes. Krishna will later say that the pleasures of the world are like a drop of water falling off the tip of a blade of grass, falling into the ocean. I like to use the phrase trinkets and baubles. Pretty to look at, but no real juice there. Chidananda Rupam, Shankara thunders, my form is bliss consciousness. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am Shiva. I am auspicious. So the practice is deeply rooted in paying attention to what's going on. Pay attention to my suffering. My ignorance says I'm suffering because I don't have what I want. Yoga says I'm suffering because I'm wanting. Ignorance says the stuff out there is what makes me happy. Yoga says, no, I just use the stuff to stop my mind, stop its projections, stop its vikshepa shakti, its projecting power. It's like the person who hits themselves on the head with the hammer. Why are you hitting yourself on the head with a hammer? It looks like it hurts. Oh, yes, it hurts. But why are you doing it? Because it feels so good when I stop. I want a bigger house. I want to live in a different city. I want a husband. I want a wife. I want a different job. I want a fancier car. I want jewelry. Bigger 401k. I want my candidate to win. Look how smart I am. And the more we want it, further away it is. And nobody's doing it to us. It's my own ignorance. Yogi again practices stepping back from the silliness of this world. Now, you won't get any support or agreement out there. The world goes round and round and round, deluded by Maya. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Yada samharate chayam kurmonganiva sarvashah indriyanindriyarthebhya astasya prajna pratishtita. When, like the tortoise, which withdraws its limbs from all sides, he withdraws his senses from the sense objects, then his wisdom becomes steady.
Yes. So we have two terms in the tradition to talk about this practice. In the Raja Yoga tradition, it's called pratyahara, sense withdrawal. We also use uparati, sense withdrawal. So there's two ways to look at it. In meditation, you've got to be able to turn your attention to your point of meditation and withdraw from the world. Now, most of us, frankly, already have this capacity. When I was a boy, I used to love to read. I'd be curled up on the couch in the living room reading a book, and my mother would call us to dinner, and I wouldn't even hear her. I tuned it out. I was so engrossed in the book. Or those of us who play with the computer or the phone, tune out other things. Who's had that experience? This is uparati, sense withdrawal. The key to sense withdrawal is deep interest and concentration. It is like when you're engaged in a conversation with someone and you see people walking down the sidewalk behind them. You notice it, but you're attentive to the person in front of you. That's the key. Now, we look at uparati, pratyahara in meditation. It's complete focus on our point of attention. Dharana, concentration. It can be your breath. It can be your murti, your image of your deity. It can be a mantra. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Shivaya. Om. I bother it. Om Namah Shivaya. As other thoughts and feelings arise, gently but firmly bring our attention back to the point. Hear the sounds outside, but they do not distract us. Now, again, referring to Viveka Chudamani, Shankara says the best uparati, sense withdrawal, is when we're moving through the world and the appearance of the sense objects don't create these or thought waves in the mind. We let the sensory data just pass through. Again, Shankara's image of a wicker basket with water being poured into it. Just positive things, negative things, neutral things. Just be empty. Don't let things land. Now, Swamiji used to poke at us if we had an attachment. Just lean on it, push the button till if you screwed up or something and you're there in front of it, he would yelling at you. You knew. Empty out. Let it pass through. Let it pass through. Empty, empty. So this is the best sense withdrawal. When as we're moving through the world, presence of the sense objects does not create blitties. We want to do both. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवजं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते. The objects of the senses turn away from the abstinent man, leaving the longing behind. But his longing also leaves him upon seeing the Supreme.
Yes. So, this is what we do. In the beginning, if we have a really intense attachment, a bad habit, the suggestion here is you may need to go through a period of abstinence from that trigger. With God's help. So let's say you have an attachment to sweets, can't control yourself. What you may need to do is not eat sweets. If you're in an abusive relationship, it may be very difficult to practice equanimity of mind. What you may need to do is absent yourself from that relationship. But Krishna says we can get rid of the sense objects, but the desire remains behind. This is why in the world of addiction, drugs or alcohol, a period of abstinence is shattered by picking up the drink or picking up the drug again. Because the desire is still there, the compulsion in a latent form. But he says the desire leaves. on seeing the Supreme. How and why? This is so important. I call this the ruthless rule of the mind. It's ruthless. The mind takes no prisoners on this one. The mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy, the greatest juice. This is why, for example, if you know someone who's done crystal meth and done drug-driven sex, oh man, it's so euphoric. It's really, really hard. Let that go. And for many of us, we may desire, oh, I want to be a yogi, I want to have a more sattvic life. But if going out with my friends on Friday night, getting loaded and dancing, what really does it for me, getting on the apps, doing hookups. It's what does it for me. That's where my mind's going to go. The mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. Now, thank God. God is the most beloved, or we'd all be screwed. I promise you, I don't promise very many things in this group. If you continue to turn your mind to the infinite, practice your viveka and vairagya. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. Seek holy company. The time will come when you'll have an experience of a joy, a peace, a happiness that's more intense, more fulfilling, more satisfying than anything you've had in the world. Even if it fades right away, that same passion that used to drive your mind into the world will now start to drive your mind towards the infinite. You're done. You're a mumukshu. You can't help it. You're now a seeker after liberation. The Lord's gotcha. The game's really over. Even if you have a lot of problems, even if you have mental illness, even if you have a past of a lot of trauma, don't worry. Thank God. God is the most beloved. Yourself is. Same thing. And in time, the heart and the mind will start to move inward. Those of us who come from a Christian background, the Master Jesus said, I have overcome the world. Isn't that an interesting statement? Now, when Jesus was speaking like this, he was in a full state of yoga, like Krishna. And what he was saying about I Wasn't the person Jesus. It was the self of you. So when the mind gets this Brahmananda Rasa Swad, not a mouthful. What's swad? Taste. Yes. What's rasa? Choose. When you get the taste of the juice of the bliss of Brahman, game's over. Doesn't mean it's over overnight. That same passion that drove the mind into drug, sex, and rock and roll, cash and prizes, more, better, different. And it's painful at this stage of our development. I'm so sorry, but that's what happens. I want to be free. I want to let go of the world. I want to live in God, but I can't do it very well yet. Who's had that thought? But it will come. It will come. So we start, if we have an intense attachment for the world, letting go of the objects. Now, there's a saying in the tradition, ashrams are for weak premies, weak lovers of God. If your capacity to let go of the world is weak, then we are drawn to go live in community. Now, when I went to Mumbai in 1993, was living as a brahmachari there. Show up, what's the first thing they do? Put you on the stool, get out the clippers. Women don't have to cut their hair. Everybody gets a white dhoti and a kurta. I think you get 3 of each. The women get white saris, get a uniform. You live in a room about a third the size of my dining room, with a metal bed frame, thin cotton mattress, a metal table with a lamp, a metal dresser, and a rubber bucket. And you live out of a rubber bucket. The rubber bucket is used to clean your room, wash the floor, stuff like that. The rubber bucket is used to bathe yourself. The rubber bucket's used to wash your clothes. That's it. They give you the scripture, you study, go to class, all very regimented. Who's ever spent time in an ashram? I can't say who's raised their hand.
Daniel.
Same kind of stuff when you were there?
Yeah, except for no bucket.
No bucket? Okay.
I don't remember the bucket. I mean, there was a tiny bucket in the bathroom, but that was for other purposes.
Yeah. But the point is, the lifestyle removes our triggers. You just in time quit thinking about what's in the newspaper, what's happening with your bank account, what's happening with job, what's happening with romance. Now, it's a pressure cooker because in that environment, the objects leave the abstinent person, but the desires remain behind. All that stuff bubbles up. You start having problems with other brahmacharis, angry at this. Unconscious starts to unload. Did that happen around you? How long were you there?
I was not there. I was not there for very long. I was just having an enjoyable experience.
You're a sadhvik yogi. I had an enjoyable experience. I sure saw it happening around me. But the problem is, for most of us, time in an ashram is temporary. Then we go back to the world. And if we haven't done the intense internal renunciation, because in the end, the objects are not the problem, it's the desire. And we have to see the relationship between desire and suffering. In my ignorance, desire, I'm not getting what I want. I need this. I'm not getting my needs met. I just love that one. What are your needs? I need a manicure. Dukkha, kama, they are the same thing. And it takes most of us a long time to figure this out. We have to hear this truth over and over and over again. Move through our lives, daily lives, with relationships and work and cars that break down and politics, etc., and see it's my craving itself that is my suffering. And we practice intense vairagya rather than trying to get what more the mind can abide in the sound, the more it turns the volume level down on the world. There's a wonderful image that we get in Yoga Vasishta. Who here has studied Yoga Vasishta? The ordinary person, they're like someone standing on the bank of the river in the hot season, roasted and toasted from head to foot. But the yogi, the sthita prajna, the person of steady wisdom, is like someone out in the cool river, up to here. Their heads still getting roasted in the sun. But here down, shitala. What does shitala mean? Cool. The beatniks of the 50s. Be cool, dude. Cool, man. Yoga Vasishta used it 1,000 years ago. Shitala manasaha. Coolness. Check our time. Okay, next one.
Yatato yapi kaunteya purushasya vipashchita indrayani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. The turbulent senses, O son of Kunti, do violently carry away the mind of a wise man, though he may be striving to control them.
So this is the problem that most of us have. We endeavor to quieten the agitation, caused by sensory data. All our misery comes to the mind through the senses. Oh, my boss said the most terrible thing. You're upset, yes. Why are you upset? You heard information, or you see something, or touch, my body hurts, etc. So the senses carry away the mind, even though we're endeavoring to control. No blame. This is not easy. Later on, when we get to the 6th chapter, the Yoga of Meditation, we're talking about deep, deep absorption. Arjuna will say, oh, Krishna, trying to control the mind's like trying to control the wind. And Krishna says, that's true. But it can be done through practice. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic mantra. Even if you find some great powerful guru, your mind may be very still in their presence, but then they go away and you're stuck with your own mind again. How do we do it? Abhyasa. Hasten slow. Now, I'm not a person who talks much about visions. In this tradition, what we want you to do is, if you can see it, that isn't it. But I had a vision years and years and years ago, and dealing with this particular topic. And there I was in this vision with a sledgehammer, trying to break up the concrete of a sidewalk. And it wouldn't do anything. You have to pound it away. Nothing was happening. Then the scene changed, and it was the same sidewalk. And the sidewalk had broken because crabgrass had grown up through the cracks. What could the crabgrass do that the sledgehammer couldn't? Constant application of energy. So when it comes to the control of the mind, my suggestion is don't use sledgehammer energy. You'll get exhausted and fail and discouraged. No. Be steadfast. Be consistent. Practice every day through 20, 30 minutes. See if you can begin to bring the mind to a still point. See if you can work as you go through your day on letting go of attachment and identification. Oh, Jim, I'm going to give up on meditation. I'm just not very good at it. Welcome to the human condition. Just be steadfast. Now, I like to tell people I've been a crappy yogi. I've made so many mistakes along the way. The one thing I've done is I've been steadfast. 50 years of sadhana next month. I met Swamiji 50 years ago, 22nd of February. And believe me, I've been a very vulgar and very extroverted person. Ew, with all sorts of problems and desires. But I've been steadfast, still doing my practice. Okay, one more.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
I mean, I can relate to the mind being like wild horses and drifting off. And I'm curious if your mind was also as filled with, as you say, either like desires or
Of course.
yeah.
But the thing that continues to extrovert the mind is always attachment and identification. It's not because I'm not concentrating enough.
And since you experienced the turning around, what tipped over for you in that moment of meeting someone like Swamiji? Like
That's just karma. You know, I had no, I didn't know who he was. I just had an interest. But from the standpoint of my practice, what's made the difference? Vipassana. That's what we say in Sanskrit. In Pali, we say vipassana. What's the translation of vipassana? Insight. Vipassana, drish pashyati, is to see. Vipassana means deep, profound insight into what's going on. When we finally see what's causing the problem, we start to let it go. 90% of our healing is awareness. I find no other way. I don't know if that's useful.
Yeah, but I have a corollary question which I can't formulate yet, so I'll pause.
You can't, well, okay, tell you a true story. I got a call from a gal and she was in tears and she'd once again been dumped by a boyfriend and says, well, I've been reading and practicing Tantra. And I thought in Tantra, you get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to be in the world. And I said, that's true. But I need to tell you, Tantra is actually the better way to pronounce it, is the more painful path. Let me give you an example. You can see a friend start down the road of maybe doing a little blow, a little cocaine at parties. And they do ecstasy at a dance party or at Burning Man. And someone says, oh, try smoking some crack. And then they shoot some heroin. You can stand back and say, well, I like to have a couple beers and stuff like that, but I'm not going where they're going. Now, they may hit a bottom and recover. That's Tantra. Or you can practice the way of sannyas and say, Nope, I'm not going there. I don't need to go through the kind of suffering they're going through. Let it go. I'm not going there. Can you see the difference? The end result is always the same. Mature sannyas. But as long as the mind still holds on to the world, you are going to suffer. And that's the message most of us don't want to hear. There's no other way that I know. Viveka, Vairagya. Always what is Viveka?
Discrimination.
Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. As long as I still invest in the world. Yeah, but can I invest in the world and have peace? Ask Donald Trump. All right, we won't do the next verse tonight. It's 8:00. Any other questions before we stop? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.